Hey guys, today I want to show you how I make these fills in these tropical pop kind of tracks. Before that though, I want to mention that this is our new project file, which you can see on our website. So if you want to explore this exact song, check that out. But today we're going to focus on mostly this track. Now basically all I used here, almost, is this little drum rack, which has 40 sounds in it. Now, first, when I was making these fills, I thought it would be best to use audio tracks because you can't do everything on a MIDI track like this in a drum rack, right? Because you can't like warp samples and you can't reverse them and do that kind of stuff. But then I ended up with way too many tracks. If you think about it, if you were to process every sample separately on an audio track and you had 40 samples, then you would have 40 tracks of just singular sounds in like a fills group, and that would probably look a bit messy, and it wouldn't give you much room for experimentation when you build the base of all the sounds. So what I did instead is I used the drum rack, and then when I built this base of edited nice samples, then I went into the clips and I could edit them easily and swap sounds for other sounds so that the fills are really polished up. And what's cool about the drum rack is that you can process every sample separately. So you can EQ it, add stuff to it. Not only that, you can also process the whole thing, obviously. I'm just processing it with a glue compressor, so I'm just evening out the volumes a bit so that all the sounds from the drum rack kind of feel like they're one thing. Today I wanted to mostly talk about the kinds of sounds you can use in fills. I think we can start from the coolest sound here, and it's this timbale, which is playing here. I doubled it with a few timbales on audio tracks, and this is the fill. This is the fill before the chorus, I think. I think this is probably the most important part in which you really you want that fill to be right. So here's this fill. It's a very short thing, but I think especially these two tracks, they add a lot. So here's this. And this fills rack is just this. So just two sounds. Timbales are Latin American percussion instruments, and yeah, they look like this. They were made popular recently by the group Major Lazer, of course. Everyone knows these timbale rolls before the drops. I think they sound really, really cool. And these guys made it a bit more interesting. They didn't just use a timbale sample. They actually are using a lot of distortion on these samples and also hard compression. And that's what I did here. Unfortunately, you can't see the processing chains in this project because I had to freeze and flatten this thing. But on these samples, there's quite a bit of saturation or distortion and glue compression. It gives the sample a lot of power. After you use a lot of compression and saturation or distortion, actually use distortion before compression, that's what I would do, then it probably can lack a bit of dynamics, so you can boost transients by drawing it in with utility, or you can use a glue compressor with a pretty long attack and a low threshold. But other than that, it's mostly just timbales, which are very distorted and compressed. Now another cool sound is bongos, and that's a Cuban percussion instrument. I have a few rolls of bongos playing here. Let me just find a fill where bongos are playing. Okay, so here's the fill where bongos are playing. This is the sample. I also have a few timbales, yeah, here playing, but this one I think is the coolest sound. So this one I had to warp in audio form because what the drum rack doesn't allow you to do, and in general MIDI drum programming, is obviously warping samples. You can toggle warping on and off here, but you can't stretch the sample and you can't really make it fit in time. So what I did is I added a few audio tracks and put that sample on an audio track and tweaked the warping of that sample so that it fits with the track, with the rhythm, and then I put it back into the fills rack. And when you do that, the sample stays warped as it was on the audio track. So that's what I do all the time. You can actually reverse sounds this way. So when you do that, you get burst of both worlds. You get the tidiness of doing it on a MIDI track, and you get the power of warping the sounds on an audio track, because you can obviously put the sounds there and bring them back into the drum rack. To do that, you can simply right-click on the sound, click Show in the Finder, and then you can put it on a. Sorry, you can put it on on an audio track, and here you can warp it, move it around, and then when we bring it back onto the fills rack, it's gonna stay warped like this. Okay, so these were bongos, and now I'm gonna show you something else. I have a few djembe samples in here. Let me find them. Okay, so here's the sample. A double djembe. This is an African percussion instrument. It looks like this. It's really cool. It gives the track a bit of that African kind of vibe. And what's cool about this one is that it's a double djembe, so it's almost like a flam. A flam is when you play a percussive instrument, you play it like twice, but very fast. And it's probably the wrong way to say it, but it's almost as if you took two samples, duplicated them on separate audio tracks, and just offset one of the samples slightly in time, so that they're not playing at the same time. So this is what this double djembe is doing, and I think it sounds cool. Let me find the fill where this is playing. Okay, so this is layered in here. I'm playing it here, this 2-roll, right after I'm playing some Foley recordings and some other Foley recordings. It's probably a djembe as well, this one, but just pitched up, I guess. But here's what this fill sounds like. I think it's really cool. It's like you can really mess around, add some Foley sounds. This is actually, I think, a typewriter effect. Or this is like this is maybe like a camera sound. Anyways, you can throw in a lot of original sounds in here. Don't limit yourself to just standard percussion sounds. Now let's take a look at some other sounds. I have a few snares here, obviously some more kind of normal standard snares. I have a few here. This is the snare roll, but these three are kind of standard snares. Actually, this one is layered, so this is what it sounds like. And yeah, so we have this sample and this thing. So that's the first snare. Now the second one, it's more of a stronger, heavier snare. It used to sound like this, but I kind of changed the beginning of the sound, and I'm boosting the transient using my technique with the ADSR curve. This is what it would sound like before my processing. And then I'm doing kind of this, so I'm kind of reducing the sustain and making a very short decay. Let's reduce the sustain completely so we can hear the decay length. And then I'm bringing back the sustain like this. And you can bring back the volume then. So I'm essentially reducing the loudness after the transient, but then I'm compensating for that reduction using the volume knob. And basically that just boosts the transient. So that's what I'm doing on this a bit heavier snare here. And this one was processed with Redux, I guess, but it's just frozen. It's just resampled now. Now let's take a look at some other stuff. Let's take a look at the snare rolls. And this one is one of my favorites. I guess it's an acoustic roll, and it's before importing it here, I misrendered it and kind of added some automations on an audio track to make it go from left to right and in the stereo spectrum. And yeah, I really like this one. I have some other ones here. Let me show you. Also acoustic, but got a different timbre. And it's really important to take them on audio tracks, really get precise with the length of them. just make sure that they're playing exactly in time with the track, because you don't want to have a snare roll that is too long or too short. We have some other stuff that is processed with Redux. I guess this one was processed with Redux. It's got this metallic kind of feel, but this was a tonal percussion sample, I guess. Yeah, and then I'm removing some frequencies from it using a bell curve here. So it becomes more metallic instead of tonal. That's what I like to do a lot, actually taking tonal percussion, metallic percussion samples and removing the tone, finding the main frequency, just doing this and finding where the frequency sticks out, and then going all the way down here. You can even use this curve to take it out even more, but often this is enough. I have some snaps here. This is pretty simple. But it's also really important to get the right snaps in place. I like when they are layered, so when it's not just one or two snaps, it's a few more. And here you can see that we have a few nice snaps layered. It's also cool if they are layered in wide in the stereo image, so some snaps are more in the left, some are more in the right channel. I love using mouth noises here, actually. I have a few of them here. So this is one of them. I have some more reverb on this because I'm using some reverb here on the return track. Obviously, I'm routing this whole track to the return track so that I'm using one reverb for all the fills, so that it sounds just better. But with this sound, I really wanted more reverb, so I added another reverb here. Yeah, so if you want to increase the length of a sample like this, you can add some reverb with a slightly bit longer decay time, because I guess this sample had a bit of reverb already. I just wanted a bit more. Yeah, there's this one as well. I guess this is layered with something. You almost never know with this stuff, but this is for sure like a click, a mouth click. I think it really sounds cool, especially if you plan it or do creative stuff with it. I'm saturating it, adding boosting some highs here. So I'm basically making it brighter, and I could have used amp to make it a bit brighter, but saturator and EQ are also very good ways of brightening up sounds. I sometimes like to use big layered snares instead of these acoustic kind of subtle snares. So this is one of them. It's a bit bigger. Now I have another one. Yeah, this one is way bigger. Now I have a few low toms here. Let me find these. For example, this one. And this one is actually interesting. I have a sound design kind of rack here. Let me show you what this rack is doing here before the chorus, when this sound hits. So I'm kind of made this double EQ rack, and because one EQ automation wasn't enough, so I kind of doubled that, and I'm automating some things on both of these with macros. But I'm essentially going down in frequency with this bell filter. So I'm going from this down in frequency, and then here with the gain I'm going down. So this is what it looks like. I can make it even more smooth, I guess, if I turn off the grid. Yeah, just like this. So this is what I'm doing here. Basically, before this thing, it used to sound like this. But with it, you can often make toms sound way bigger if you boost the sub frequencies there, and they sound a bit longer because, I guess, of some feedback. But this is one cool way of making a tom sound bigger. Yeah, I have a few like hand flams on drums as well. What I'm doing here is actually interesting. I'm using the Beats preserve transients mode. So I'm warping this sound, and I'm choosing the Beats mode and going to transients. And every time there's a transient, now we can choose how long this sound we want it to be. So if we go up with the envelope, it plays the whole thing. But now if we go really low, it kind of reduces the length of this sound after the transients. And that's a really useful thing, especially when you have ready fills and you want to import them into the rack and kind of mess around with these. And that's really cool. You can actually get more creative than that. You can actually try this technique on like acapellas and stuff. Every time there's a transient, it's gonna basically cut off the sound after the envelope setting you set up here. Make sure to check this option out. Now about Foley recordings, this is also cool. I have a coin drop sound. And this sound is actually used in one of the fills. Let me find that. Yeah, and it's kind of in between two hits. So I'm playing this thing and then this thing. And in between, I'm just adding a coin drop effect. And that's really cool. I like this effect. This reminds me of a shutter effect on a camera. But you pretty much never know with these things. I have some Foley like drumline style things, so snare rolls, but this is not really a snare roll. I have no idea what this Foley recording is. But I think it sounds cool, and you can really get creative with this. What I'm doing here is, let me see, I don't even remember what I did. So this is the effect called erosion, and let me show you what this sound sounds like before the erosion. Wow. Okay, so it changes a lot. So I'm panning one chain in this rack to the left completely, one chain to the right, and I'm kind of distorting the sound differently with the noise setting on both of these. So that gives it the wide impression. That's really cool. I love this sound. Yeah, just get creative with stuff like this. Anyways, guys, if you want to get more of these kind of sounds, we actually put together a whole sample pack for you. So there's all kinds of sounds, timbales, and all kinds of stuff that I mentioned. You can see it on our website and check out this project file. It's called Summer Vibes. That's it for today's video. I want to thank you guys very much for watching, and see you soon on the channel.